Thank you, gentlemen, so much. We appreciate you being here. Give it up one more time. While I catch my breath from having a little heart attack over here. All right. Well, thank you so much. Again, if you haven't had a chance to grab some food, feel free to do that. I want to say a special thank you to everybody that's on our planning committee. The names are here, but if you're here, would you please come up and give a round of applause from the people, please? They have volunteered their time over the next couple of months. And I had to say thank you to them. Yeah. I love it. Yeah. And the reason, and the two guys in the back are on the cameras. Yes, Alden and Alan. And Aisha and I and Camille are usually the three that do this every year, so we are so happy to have help. It was amazing. They have done some amazing boards throughout the hospital, so you can go look at the one near the cafeteria. It has a lot of figures there. We did one at 1650. Camille did one at 1650. Aisha did one next to her office that was I Have a Dream with some hands and people. I think we filled the board already, right? With people writing in what their dreams were. So check that out before it goes down next week because they really were special. And then you guys, we have seats here now that the performers are over. So please come. We don't want you to stand while we have our next speaker come up. Thank you all so much. Sure. What's the name of your group?
Oh. Okay, we're doing a dance community with the Reserve, but our group is say like African dance, so that's what we're talking about. We have a different company we used to work in. It's called like Cavalia with the Soul. So we've been traveling a lot, and we've been doing the showcase a long time ago. So we're just taking a break and living in Santa Fe. We do not like it here, but my brother is living here in Africa, so we keep going forth and come back. And we have a dance class on Sunday. My name is Rijepo, so she brought us in here every time. I've been coming here for like 5 years. I keep going here, so every year I'm here. So if anybody want to enjoy to come and to try the African dance, you're welcome, you know. So you can come in on Sunday. We started like at 4 o'clock. So I think I don't bring information, but if you go to...
We can send it out to everybody. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll send it out. She has a little flyer of when the classes are, and so people can go and do. It's a great class. It's a good workout, and it's a lot of fun. You don't feel like you're working out. Yeah. I don't. You know, I don't like to work out. That's my thing.
If anybody have some little business you wanted to have some performing, you want to invite it, you can contact. You're welcome. You can contact us and contact Rizoko, so we can come and enjoy too for that too. You know, so we have a phone number. You can call or text, email, so it'll be easy to respond to anything.
Yes, and we'll find that for you guys. Thank you all so much. Okay, all right, so next what we'll do while you guys get some food, we're gonna set up for our next speaker, Fabian Armijo from our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and we'll start that in just about 2 minutes. Give you some time to get some food, grab a bottle of water, and we'll get started with the program. Thank you so much.
One other thing that is, this was like, oh, is this on?
The live stream.
Oh no.
right. So in African American community, we have a tradition of playing the Black National Anthem before our events. So we're gonna do that. And if it's okay if you don't know the lyrics, we have them for you there on the screen. And this was written by James Weldon Johnson, and you see him pictured here. And I'm really excited because we actually got one of our local church groups to sing and record it for us. We wanted them to come and be here, but they weren't available. But they recorded it for us, and I would love to play and have us all sing along. If you would please stand. Make sure you're on there. So thank you so much for participating. You may have a seat. And I would love to invite Fabian Armijo, who's our director of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I can't say enough about this guy. He also is the director of our Interpreter Language Services. And I am so proud to be at a place that cares that we deliver the patient's information in a language they can understand. Because not every hospital has on-staff interpreters or even a on-staff health literacy department that makes sure, which we have them here, Kath and Rebecca, and their job is to make sure that our patients can read the written information in a way that they can understand. And that is super important when we're delivering care to our patients, that they can understand it so they can go home and act on the information that we give them. So help me welcome Fabian.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks everybody for being here. Thank you, Nicole, for creating this space for us to all get together and celebrate Black History Month. I've had a lot of fun being on the committee, made a lot of friends, so hopefully we can continue to work together and keep this event happening every year. I think it'll just keep getting. Okay, cool. Did everybody hear what I said? Okay, all right. So yeah, hopefully this is another one of many Black History Month celebrations that we have here. So as Nicole mentioned, I'm the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. I've been at the hospital for about 5 years now. I started out as a medical interpreter. So I speak Spanish and I can interpret into Brazilian Portuguese. So I provided that service to the hospital for a couple of years. And it's an area that's really close to my heart because one of the things that we do in language services is break down language barriers for all patients. And then recently became the director of this department. So I'm really excited to be here with everybody. I wanted to just talk briefly because we have an amazing keynote speaker coming up and I want to give him as much time as possible. But a little bit about what my vision is for the Office of DEI and what I hope to achieve here at UNM hospitals. So this is what we have already. Some of the classes that we teach are on diversity and cultural humility. And we use the word humility to make sure that people always know that there's something more to learn about diversity. So none of us are ever really completely competent in diversity. And also, reminding people that when it comes to culture, none of us are experts in any culture. You know, it's also individual. So a couple of things I'd like to include this a little bit more in the diversity classes are talking about privilege and what does privilege mean, and creating a space where people can talk about that and not feel paralyzed, or they don't want to. They feel like they can't say something because they don't want to seem a certain way. They don't want to. Maybe they feel guilty for their privilege. So I want to make a space where people can talk about that, and how we participate. You know, with our privilege. What do we do for other people? I want to talk more about marginalized groups in diversity. So talking about ableism, we haven't really talked about that. Talk about institutional racism, talking about so many other groups that are branches of diversity we want to include. We have a really strong program here with LGBTQ Matters, and I want to continue to make that stronger, and start to branch out a little bit more. And Misty Salas here in the front row was the director of diversity before me, and when I took over this program, I was so lucky because the program is really strong, has a lot of support and a lot of relations with the university across Lomas and the School of Medicine. So hopefully we can continue on that. So big shoes to fill. So we also teach a diversity class, and this is something that makes me really proud about this hospital, is that every leader in the hospital goes through a diversity and cultural humility training. So adding some of those elements into that too. The other classes that we have, again, focusing on LGBTQ issues, are Safe Zone training and caring for the LGBTQ community. So those are classes that are offered to all staff. Now, I want to talk a little bit, with the rest of my time, I want to talk about language, because language is something that helps us, in a hospital, helps us have access to care, helps us understand what the care that we're receiving is. Nicole talked about health literacy and our partners in health literacy and kind of what their role is. And even if you only speak English, medical knowledge is hard to understand if you're not a clinical person. So we are lucky to have health literacy department and Native American health services in our hospital. So when we look at African languages and the languages that are requested by African patients, these are the top four that we see: Arabic, Swahili, French, and Sango. So it's really important that providers know, and we try to do this in our department, talking about how different it is to speak Middle Eastern Arabic and African Arabic. So somebody that speaks Sudanese Arabic or Moroccan Arabic, if we have an interpreter that's from a different country, the language won't always work. French is also on there because French gets in the way of our data sometimes, because when we have a patient that speaks French that's admitted to the hospital, a lot of the times they're not from Paris, a lot of the times they're from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So, it's also somebody speaking different dialect of French. In Belgium and Switzerland and France, French language is standardized, so those languages, there aren't that many differences. But when you're talking to somebody from Congo and French is mixed with Swahili, it's very different. So we have an obligation to our patients to make sure that we understand those differences and get them the right person to help them. So with Arabic, we do have Sudanese Arabic and Moroccan Arabic as separate than modern standard or classical Arabic. One thing that had us all on our, we all lost a lot of sleep in language services about was a language called Sango. So does anybody know about Sango or where Sango is spoken? Anybody? Huh? People are saying Central African Republic. Yeah. So when we got, we had some patients that were here, and there was a baby in the ED that was admitted to the PICU, and we couldn't find anybody to help us. We didn't even know what the language was, and when the patients were speaking it. So our vendors at Pacific Interpreters helped us figure out what language it was, and we found a couple of I think it was Lutheran services that actually connected us with somebody that spoke Sango here in Albuquerque. So that's one of our top languages that we have here. So I want to mention a little bit about the data. So I said that French was kind of in the way, but also we have these two options when people come to our hospital and frontline people are checking them in, they can choose the option other. And when we look at our data, other pops up as an option, as a language, but what we don't see is what language is actually typed in on that. So when we look at other, we see Dari, we see Urdu, we see other African languages that aren't on this list. So one of my tasks for 2020 is to be looking at changing that and trying to see if we have the word other, what language is tied to that. Because what I think we may need to do is increase our department, the language services department. And one of the languages that's high up there is Swahili. So we have a lot of refugee patients that speak Swahili. And we're trying to make sure that we're meeting that demand with in-person interpreters versus over the phone. So I just put this together quickly. These are some of the countries represented by our patients that speak Arabic. So these are the countries in Africa where we've seen patients requesting a certain Arabic. So Mauritania, Morocco, Tunisia, all these places with the star are places where we want to make sure that we have African Arabic and not Middle Eastern Arabic. And then the last one are just kind of an idea of where French is spoken in Africa. So as I mentioned, it's important if we have a person that has French as their language. Sometimes people will say that French is their language when they're really more comfortable with Swahili, but they may think that they'll have a better chance getting an interpreter in French. But the interpreters that we have are from France or from Canada most of the time. So the language barrier isn't always met. So I just wanted to talk about that. I want to make room for Dr. Martin to speak next. But thank you all for having me, and I hope you enjoyed the event so far.
All right, thank you so much, Fabian. All right, and without further ado, I would love to introduce our next speaker. Dr. Jamal Martin lectures in Africana Studies and serves as the Associate Vice Chancellor for African American Health at UNM Health Sciences Office for Community Health. We're lucky to have him because he just returned from Africa, Middle East, Caribbean, doing public health work. And he has carried out interdisciplinary teaching, research, and service through public health practice and epidemiology within local, national, and international settings. He investigates coverage with mind, brain, and education sciences. As the director of UNMP studies, Dr. Martin recognizes structural violence as a global health challenge and advocates for strategic peace-building education, health, and diplomacy. Help me welcome Dr. Jamal Martin. If you like it quicker. Okay.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Sabah khair. Bonjour. Hujambo. Three other languages. Thank you for this opportunity. Let me hit you with a spoiler alert and a bit of a caveat here. If you don't like inconvenient truths, this is the time to leave. No, I'm serious, because I'm not playing around anymore with this stuff because it's far too serious. As we unpack all this. When asked to give this talk, it occurred to me that I really hadn't sort of mapped out my vision for my new job title and things I was supposed to be doing. So part of this talk is going to be somewhat philosophical, some is going to be very technical in many ways about where I'm going to be going with the community, with the hospital, and the systems. Having said all that, I need to remind myself to slow down a little bit also too, and remind you all that don't try to capture everything on the slides. Each one of my slides is like a book chapter in itself. So just try to get a feel for it, move on, and we can discuss some things later. Is that okay? Okay. So what I wanted to do is just kind of talk about how my new responsibilities are in alignment with the health sciences center's goals. And so you can see that they're very clearly, elucidated there. And as I began this presentation, I wanted to honor Black History Month also too, but also talk about the issues that are relevant to people of African descent in this state and globally, and how we do things, how we can improve and do things better. So you can see that it's, tell you the truth, it should be a full-time job, not 50% of my time, but that's another story. But be this as it may, I'm going to call this Innovations in Critical Thinking. And this particular talk, I'm calling it a primary care toolbox for healthy African American communities. Much of my work with World Health Organization and UNICEF has been about primary care leadership development, as well as child survival projects. And I've worked in all forms of research, pediatric hospitals, maternal child hospitals. I've done cancer research, I've done a lot of different things. And I probably need to slow down because I'm starting to machine gun a little too fast also again. But I get excited about this stuff. But this goes from innovations in critical thinking. I think there's something that's missing a lot from my work in terms of bringing about transformative change in healthcare systems. And we often tell students on this campus and the main campus that we want you to be critical thinkers, but we never tell them how to do it. So a big part of my work is about transdisciplinary thinking and how we work across disciplines, because if we could solve the problems with one discipline alone, we wouldn't be having these problems. We need to work beyond, across, and beyond, and in between the disciplines to gather the valuable information that's necessary to solve complex problems. So, and as I tell students, one of my favorite words is metacognition. Thinking about thinking while thinking to improve your thinking. And That's the definition that we're going to use for this talk. Because why? Because we have to solve critical problems in terms of how we move towards human dignity. So those of us in the room who are old enough, who are dated like me, remember Walter Cronkite. And I always thought this was an interesting quote that he used. America's healthcare system is neither healthy, caring, nor a system. And I think that's still very true today as we talk about, the things the components that goes into it. Part of this I want to talk about, I did a talk yesterday for African American Student Services on post-traumatic slave syndrome dysfunction. And this is one of my favorite quotes by Martin Luther King, Jr. Of all the forms of inequality, injustice in healthcare is the most shocking and inhumane. And people have been borrowing and using this statement for a number of different years, but I don't think they really get it about what it really means. And I see a loss of a lot of altruism that exists also too now in the healthcare system. In fact, I'm going to go online and go up front and just say that capitalism is probably a public health disease. So as we talk about a formula, thank you. I'm going to run for governor next. As we talk about the formula for oppression under structural violence, this is a formula that I put together, and I think we need to address this. For me, as an epidemiologist and public health professional, I used to be a respiratory therapist, I used to be a lab tech and all these other things. I started out in nursing as an orderly, as an OR tech. I've done a lot of different things in my career. And I've learned to understand that we need to look at root causes and not just look at the effects of things. So this talk really is about the root causes of much of this. And I've decided after my last few trips and other things that I'm going to be very upfront and honest about it. I'm going to name white supremacy because we have to name it in order to identify it. And so and when I talk about supremacist ideology, I'm not talking about skin color, folks. I'm talking about an ideology. I'm talking about a mindset, okay? Let's keep that in mind. And so as we talk about supremacist ideology and what that means, we're talking about individuals who have determined through illogical reasoning that they are superior. And if they're superior, then someone else must be inferior. And if they're inferior, they can be subordinated, and they can be subjugated and controlled. And anytime you want to go to war against somebody, the first thing you do is dehumanize the population. It makes it easy to denigrate them. So for me, the root cause of this supremacist ideology is located in the false concept of race. And I keep trying to tell people there's only one race, the human race. They're not multiple races. So with our work on the main campus with the Institute for the Study of Race and Social Justice, we decided that whenever we talk about race, we're going to put it in quotation marks to let people know that we're talking about an economic, social, and political construct, not a biological construct. But that doesn't mean that racism and racialization doesn't exist. But if we take that notion of supremacist ideology and we mix it up with discriminatory acts, culture, historical trauma, disparities, and inequities, it leads to structural dominance. And when we have structural dominance, we have these issues of power and privilege, which was alluded to earlier, and we see something else that Martin Luther King talked about, the triplets of evil in this country: racialization, materialism, extreme materialism, and militarism is part of that structural dominance. And that leads to oppression. And by oppression, I'm talking about ageism, genderism, sexism, ableism, disability issues, language, and that oppression really leads to 5 different types of injustices. Distributive injustice, in terms of resource allocation; procedural injustice, how those rules are fared out or meted out; issues regarding retributive injustice. We believe more in punishment in this country than we do in restorative justice and healing. And last but not least, issues regarding moral exclusion and cultural imperialism. So as we talk about white supremacy, you look at this pyramid, and if you look, most of the time when we talk about supremacist or supremacist ideology or racism in this country, we're always looking at above the surface, at the tip of the iceberg: lynching, hate crimes, swastikas, burning crosses, etc. But we never look below the surface. And that's something how, it reflects how we've been trained in this country also too, to deal with surface similarities and not with deep structure in terms of cognition. But if you look below that, you see the overt forms, socially unacceptable, and the covert forms, which is socially acceptable. And somehow we never really seem to address those issues. And I think it's high time that we start understanding that and recognizing that, because we're not going to solve the problems, by looking at it through one lens. If the only tool you have is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail, as been said before. So we need to think about this from I'm not going to say multidisciplinary, because when we talk about multidisciplinary, we're talking about how 2 disciplines sit across from each other, but there's no integration of theories and frameworks and concepts. And therefore you never get new ideas and concepts. But if we talk about transdisciplinary learning, we're talking about where they converge, and it's a new stream of consciousness, because you're looking at multiple theories and concepts and integrating them in unique ways. So as we think about this notion of covert white supremacy was socially acceptable, we really have to understand that we have a very large problem with structural violence in this country. And as kind of an older guy now, I tell people that on my birth certificate, it says that I'm a mixed race. It still says that that I'm colored on my birth certificate, and that my father and my grandfathers were colored men. Virginia institutionalized regular racism in that sense. But I remember as a child growing up during the tail end of Jim Crow, political apartheid, I remember seeing signs telling me that I couldn't sit at this counter because it was for colored only. The color's not allowed. But I will say that while I've seen certain things get better in terms of this individual racism, we really have to take on structural or institutionalized systemic racism. That's being perpetuated and promulgated continually throughout universities and education. So as we talk about institutionalized racism, we have to talk about something, the initial historical insults, the structural barriers, the issues of inaction in face of need, societal norms, biological determinism, which I'm going to say a little bit more about scientific racism in that sense, unearned privilege, and what these all mean. So just kind of glaze it there for a moment, and then I'm going to keep going through this, because right now I feel like Samuel Jackson in Jurassic Park. Hang into your butts, folks, because we're going to keep moving. This is something I did because I started thinking about this whole notion of institutionalized racism. And I put this here because I want to show people just how deeply this is embedded in the laws of this land. So when you look at this chronology of institutionalized racism, you see the Three-Fifths Compromise of 1787. You see the Naturalization Act of 1790 that says only free white persons are permitted to become naturalized citizens. These are the same debates we're having today in many ways also too. Only male citizens who vote, serve on juries, hold office, hold property. The Fugitive Slave Act of 1793, which enforced the article, says you must return runaway slaves to their masters. And then you have, the Black Codes of 1804 to 1865, the Indian Relocation Act of 1830, the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. It says law enforcement now has the power to look at someone and profile them and say, oh, you look black or you look so-and-so, so you must be a runaway slave. So therefore we can capture you and do whatever we want to do with you. This is still ingrained in our thinking today. So you have the kidnapping and conscription of free blacks. Then you have the Supreme Court decision, Dred Scott, a Negro free or otherwise cannot have citizenship rights. The Homestead Act of 1862 that says, let's have this American exceptionalism. Let's have this migration, move west and move indigenous people off their lands and move them further out west and do things and control the lands. You have Northern apprenticeship laws, the slaughterhouse cases of 1873, which deals with privilege and immunities clauses, and the Supreme Court decisions that overturned Reconstruction, 1877. The Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882, the Jim Crow laws, the Supreme Court decisions. This is embedded in three branches of our government, from the executive office to the legislative office to the judiciary. It's embedded in our culture, So how do we have to start defining that as we look at this in different ways. So as we talk about social and cultural political identity, this is from a textbook on black psychology, and I always like using this in class because it's a good description to kind of show what's going on here. And if you look at this, you'll see that this first circle that describes your American attitudes, you'll see that basically the way this has been evolved out of the educational system in terms of Hegel and Kant, which basically institutionalized racism incorporated into education in the 1700s, you see that they view people of color as being weak, and therefore they need to be dominated. That became part of the Education Act that infiltrated everything else. So it's a very reactionary perspective, and this perspective says that it narrows thoughts, and lifestyles about people. But through that circle, you see that it looks at certain people who they consider to be ghetto-centric. And face it, some people view themselves as ghetto-centric for whatever reasons. But inside this other circle, you see this notion where people see themselves as being black or African-American or African. And at some point, when you look at the history of people of African descent, you have to realize, where do you come from? What is your identity? Your history just didn't start with slavery. It really didn't at this point. So you need a means to identify and define yourself rather than have someone else who has a negative opinion of you define you and look at it. And this is why we're talking about implicit bias and all these other things today also too, and uncertainty in clinical things. So we need that type of reference. There's a whole lot to unpack in this slide also too, but we'll have other conversations about this. So this brings us to this point of, trauma and social location, and the issues of what happens to children, the most vulnerable of our society and our population, when they've been exposed to structural violence on these levels, and what happens from conception to death, and the issues of microaggressions and implicit bias and other things. And those of you, many of you know now that we do a lot of talk about social determinants of health and what that means. And as a public health professional, I've been through this notion where we've gone through infectious diseases, through chronic diseases, to now where we're talking about social determinants of health and what that means. And one of the things that we've learned that we talk about is how zip code is more important than genetic code. Where you live, work, play, and go to school has more of a bearing on your health. Place matters. which is why I always tell the medical students when I was teaching them, we can't treat people with pills and medicines and put them back in a socially toxic environments. It's just not going to do us any good. We're just going to see repeating. You nurses, you know it, you see it every day. You know, it's one of the reasons why I kind of got out of clinical stuff and thought, like, there must be a better way of doing this, because I got tired of seeing the same things in clinic every day and realized people aren't getting any better. Something is wrong with this picture, you know? But we should understand that we need a new perspective that says, rather than asking someone what's wrong with you, we should ask what has happened to you, you know, to get a better definition, because there's this notion of embodiment. People carry their histories in their bodies, okay? So, let's talk about the slave health deficit, the African Holocaust, or the Ma'afa in Swahili, which means the great upheaval. As you look at this notion of cultural and historical trauma in African descent people, you know, in fact, I'm going to throw kind of a question out for you folks. Outside of Nigeria, which has the largest population of African descent people on the continent, what nation has the largest population of African descent people? Three more guesses. Brazil. Brazil has the largest population of African descent people outside of Africa. You have to remember, during the slave trade, people weren't slaves. They were kidnapped and turned into slaves. Most of those people wound up in Central America, the Caribbean, and South America. So you have Afro-Ecuadorians, Afro-Peruvians, Afro-Colombianos, you know, there's a whole lot of us, you know, in that milieu. So, so you have this notion of health hazards during the capture and kidnapping of enslavement process, the Middle Passage, the breaking in period, slave health in America's life expectancy at birth and child mortality rates, the American Foundations of Medicine and slave diseases, negritude, drapetomania. How many have ever heard of drapetomania before? Drapetomania was a disease that physicians attributed to African, you know, enslaved Africans, and said, if you run away from slavery, that means you have a mental illness. No, seriously. This was the documentation in the medical journals. If you run away from slavery, that means that you have a mental illness. And the cure is to cut off a foot. So you can't run anymore. There's a whole list of these things. So these things go back to colonial days up to the present. This is not just Tuskegee 626. This goes way back in terms of these things. So you have all these things. You have the phased and broken promises of Reconstruction and the dissolution of the Freedmen's Bureau, which emancipated slaves and helped poor whites. You have the political and legal apartheid, affirmative action, racial reentrenchment, racism, colorblindness, reverse racism, institutionalized racism, liberal colorblindness, implicit bias. I mean, there's a whole lot of trauma embedded in all these things that people face day in and day out. You know, when I speak with my brothers and sisters in Native American and Latino communities, we always ask ourselves, before we leave the house in the morning each day, what do we have in our first aid kit? Because we know that once we erect a psychic shield around ourselves, when we get out there into the mainstream world, we're going to be under assault from so many different levels. So, the various phases of slavery. First phase of slavery, outright kidnapping. The second phase, slavery, convict lease system, the 13th Amendment, which says, free the slaves. Slavery shall exist in the United States no more, unless what? You've been convicted of a crime. Wow, more institutionalized racism. This is the beginning of the prison industrial complex and what happened with the convict lease slave system. How women and children, you know, were basically accused of crimes because they were poor and had no money, considered vagrants, and sold into systems to build highways and roads and things. And then you have the industrial, you know, prison complex today, prisons for profit, the third phase, which this statement by William Faulkner is always, it gets me right here. The past is never dead. In fact, it's not even past. So, place matters in America. Medical apartheid, if you want to read more about these issues of the dark history of medical experimentation from colonial times to the present, read Harriet Washington's book. Somebody should really make a documentary of this, because she's really done a very fine job of documenting these stories. Like everything we know basically today about OBGYN was learned from illegal experimentation on African descent women without their consent and all kinds of things. And we have statues erected to these people, you know, and all kinds of honorariums and things. So we have that to deal with in terms of history. But then again, how many are familiar with unequal treatment? This book was published a couple of years ago. It's 900 pages. Read the summary if you don't have the time to read 900 pages. But in this book, it details how women and people of color receive inferior treatment in hospitals and clinics. You know, and we've seen in many ways with this implicit bias and other types of things. We've seen clinical uncertainty in some ways. But it's a very fine book that talks about how people don't receive treatment that they should receive in many ways as well. So it's all part of this long storied history. So basically what I'm saying is that I'm a witness for the prosecution, because for me this is structural violence. And And by structural violence, I'm talking about disabilities, disparities, deaths that result from systems, institutions, policies, or cultural beliefs, and how it meets some people's human needs, but not the needs of others. And it also, takes away people's human rights. Increased relationships that cause secondary violence occur. What is secondary violence? Self-destruction, alcohol abuse, self-medication, drug abuse, suicide, depression, internalized depression, community destruction, crime, interpersonal violence, domestic violence, rape. Notice whenever we talk about violence, we want to talk about these areas of community destruction, but we don't evolve to grow to think about the larger issues as well. Then we have national, international destruction, rebel movements, terrorism, suicide, civil wars, revolutions, coups, wars. So these are reactions, responses to structural violence, and the secondary violence. And this notion of secondary violence is something that John Galton came about in 1969 after he listened to a speech by Martin Luther King, and started to think about peace. But if you look at the World Health Organization's guidelines for health promotion and disease prevention, they list certain things that are necessary for people to have optimum, degrees of well-being. And believe it or not, food, shelter, air, and water are further down the list. Number one thing on the list is peace. But how do we recognize peace? We know it by its absence when we don't see it, which means we're looking at a lot of violence every day on so many levels. You don't have to be an epidemiologist to note that destructive violence exists. You can just walk around town, you drive around town, and you see how certain neighborhoods are much more affluent and wealthy than there are in other neighborhoods. Or in certain neighborhoods, you have more check cashing places, or liquor stores, other types of things, no clinics, no healthy food stores. Those are the forms of structural violence, and stressors. So human suffering and structural violence, you see poorly designed policies that yield inadequate food, housing, health, safe and just working conditions, education, economic scarcity, security, clothing, family relationships. So people live a life of oppression, exclusion, exploitation, marginalization, collective humiliation, stigmatization, once we label a diagnosis on them, repression, inequities, lack of opportunities, women, children, and elders, different people from different ethnic, racial, cultural, religious groups, sexual orientations, there's a lot of hurt that's out there. There's a lot of suffering. And when I work on main campus, I'm always trying to tell my colleagues that coming from a clinical background and the things that I've done before in research, we have to do a better job of what we do and what we teach. Because people are suffering, they're dying. It's not about us trying to be more involved in self-aggrandizement because you got so many books published and you got so many papers published. How's it work being turned back into the communities who need this? This is a public institution, taxpayers' money. We should be doing more things for the people. In fact, our president said something not too long ago, and I thought and I don't think she realized at the time when I mentioned it to her, I thought this should be a marketing thing. This is not the University of New Mexico, it should be the University for New Mexico. And I thought that's how we brand this, and this is how we turn it around to do the work. So I put this in because in our last retreat in July for Office of Community Health, we decided that in our mission statement, we're going to add the words, we're going to talk about human dignity. So you see the two pictures, talking story, having a rap session, whatever, and not texting, that's for sure. And they're talking about what other words, loss of dignity, degradation, humiliation, shame, loss of self-respect, loss of pride, abasement, mortification, and dignity. So I think we have to do things to bring people's, human dignity back. And sometimes, when we have patients in the hospital, there's definitely loss of dignity for patients sometimes when there's bodily function, all kinds of things, and how do we keep our own human compassion? We see so much of this on a daily basis becomes problematic also too. But one of the things that I want to look at much further also too is this notion of human dignity is not considered a human right in Western society. It's not, and we don't respect human rights in this country. So we must, so how are we going to learn to respect human rights if we can't even respect human dignity? So we have a larger work to do. But there is a value to this because health is not a commodity, and life and death matters. It really does. You folks know this very clearly. You know it, we live it, suffer from it. So these next part of the slides is going to really sort of look at my roles and responsibilities in terms of how I plan to tackle this job and work with you folks and others in the community and around the state in terms of UNM Health Sciences Center in the hospital. How I'm going to look at innovation and translation into clinical and educational practice for health equity. How am I going to sort of talk about undoing scientific racism in academic health centers, integrated clinical governance, how we look at organizational behavior, how we look at cultural studies, education and education, and issues of systems change and interventions. How do we address racialized inequalities and inequities in healthcare and bring about a theory of action for a culture of health. So just to remind you folks that this notion of scientific racism is real. It's embedded in a lot of our practices, in our work, whether it's in health sciences or not. It's there in a lot of different places. Once you become keen to it and you look for it, and you see like, oh, there's a red flag here. There's a buzzword here. And even when the fallacies of racism is exposed, it still exists. But you notice over the last few months, we've had this resurrection of this notion of white supremacists in this country and around the world, waving their flags and doing things. And tell you the truth, that's an outcome of what happened after the Civil War, because of the phase and broken promises of Reconstruction and how that evolved in one sense and what's gained ascendancy. So supremacist ideology. As we talk about 500 years of whiteness, because remember, when you look at the literature and sociology and other things, people who came from Italy and other places, they weren't considered white when they came to America. But later on, some people adopted this notion of whiteness. There's some great literature in those areas. But Harris in 1995 wrote a book about whiteness as property. Literature's wrote a great book on an article on possessive investment. Peggy McIntosh, have you ever heard of Peggy McIntosh before? Okay. And her invisible knapsack. Okay. She talks about privilege, performance, your role, terror by Bell Hooks, privilege supremacy by Gilmore, and Mills, Bonilla Silva, Leonard, just not Gilmore, also talked about racialized social systems. So when you look at critical race studies, you begin to see this notion that maybe Derek Bell was right about the permanence of racism. That it's so deeply embedded in our DNA. How do we change that structure? Does it continue to mutate or become teratogenic or what? So I'm going to skip over this one. This is for me to keep track of what I'm doing, but I'm really embracing this model of syndemics. As we talk about comorbidities and comortalities and how we look at these issues, because many times you see people when they come into clinics and hospitals, they're not suffering from one malady or illness, and at some point their bodies are trying to compensate, and something else goes wrong, and then it becomes more and more complicated. So these are the three different structures in terms of how the biological processes and pathophysiology of conditions interact, how these conditions are experienced by patients and their intersocial networks in terms of the somatic experiences, the daily activities, meanings for this, and how do medical institutions address co-occurring conditions. And I've noticed that our Department of Health now is starting to collect data on syndemics also too, so this is going to be useful for us in terms of how we plan things. And so it's useful to understand these structures and these cultural factors. Understand the health pyramid impact in terms of how we increase life expectancy. If we had a health Olympics in the United States right now, around the world, with 29 industrialized nations, where would the United States rate for among life expectancy? 29. And how much money do we spend per capita on health care? $78,000 per person. But Japan spends maybe $2,500 per person. And they have a long life expectancy than we do. And other nations, Cuba, Malta, other nations don't have the per capita GDP that we have and things like that. Well, how are they going to better this if we can? If we're so damn great? We're good, but we're not great yet because we haven't gotten rid of poverty and hunger and homelessness and other things. So, my dissertation really sort of looked at cognitive and neurosciences in terms of health and disease. And I really looked at what happens to the brains of children who've been impacted by violence, because I've been in neuropsychopharmacological research for a number of years. So I wanted to brush up on some things. So my work now really includes this notion of mind, body, mind, brain, and education sciences and what they mean. And the most important thing I think right now is how we look at how people's brains have been hijacked. And because their brains have been hijacked, they've lost a intelligence for social justice. Because this fear and this notion is built up. Long story short, when you lose your empathy for human suffering, what do you become? A sociopath. Truly, when you lose your empathy for human suffering, you become a sociopath. And we have leaders in many places who've lost their empathy for the human suffering. So what does that suggest? So when we look at sort of whiteness, it has three characteristics. One, it negates democracy. Two, it stunts intellectual growth and development. And three, it's irrational. It's irrational. This is from a survey. This is from the American Psychological Association 2016. But again, this new survey, my survey shows impact of discrimination and stress on health, disparities, and inequality, life expectancy, social determinants. People are suffering, folks. People are worried sick. They're worried sick. And they worry now takes everything. This in three main areas. And even affecting youth, money, employment issues, and family responsibilities. But I thought that we cared so much about families and communities. We had America's dialogue such dialogue is about the individual community. It's not about the families. So the family line, so that's another line. That's also chronic stresses. So chronic stresses, you know, you see that, you know, I mean, the only person doesn't have stress is the person that's dead. So we have the stress, and there's no stress, no stress. Your stress is enough for us to keep his hands up, we reduce the data over, to keep his hands up, and you might be going to their stress sometimes. But when we face uncertainty feelings, we can use phrases. We look for present factors. The present factors. And if we have like that one for us, then we usually have no real stress. Those who don't have those capabilities usually have more coping issues, more coping intrusive, thoughts and feelings, smoking, alcohol abuse, greater alcohol abuse, animal diets, physical activity, substance activities, adherence to compliance to medical treatment leads to more physiological functions, compromised efficiency, competence, and worse on a larger scale, worse suicide, homicide, and genocide. I'm just so stressed, so they feel like they always need back to feel themselves, what they're proud of that. And you know that slaves got around, still slaves are still considered property. So chronic stress has a lot to do with violations. I've had the opportunity to work the levels of organization themselves and what organize themselves in the other side of the system, now on the side of social environment. But again, what's called research goes to molecular, goes to cellular organisms use the budget for the NIH over the last 30, 50 years. Y'all are less about curing, something is wrong with the picture. So more about biology, more or less biology, less about how to cure you. So when you look at these things, social environments, we talk social environment about stressful language, about stressful social support, social movements, like social resources, technology, family environments, neighborhood environments, environmental justice. I bet you knowledge that means that's better than my test, but I feel like certain amounts of formaldehyde is those responsible for those things. Most of the time ignores, also too. So environment, trauma, cultural studies, stories, stories, people say, and it's hard to do right now. And it's hard to tell their stories. But that's what you got. We gotta listen. So why is so certain that people like so certain that people not tell them when they have been or they just came from so I'm going to announce also the government integrated local governments. On a roll now, you gotta come on. So as a public we're not looking at some of this, we're public health 3.0. We're talking about engaging both perspectives, engaging both parties, generating the parties, generating impact, collecting from social determinants to fellow social determinants. This is for public health is going to health revolution. It's the first revolution is infectious diseases, which infectious is still in terms of emerging infectious diseases, those factors. Second revolution is second question is crises of lifestyle. It's not choices that make choices and not enforcement. So we're in this new moment, evolution. Quite honestly, as we talk about honestly, when we talk about people around the globe, people around this world, last 25 years, last 25 years, 1980s, we talk about something like that. We talk about something like the United States. It's so much better if we allow some standards things. We just get around to now. So, as we mentioned, we talk about increased use of evidence-based services, provide services outside the class settings, initiatives that reach whole populations, and it's new environment that we have to proceed on. As we talk about public health 3.0, we have to talk about enhanced modified funding, actual data, public health accommodation, sexual collaborations, strategies, emphasizes the clinical and community prevention services. But you know what? We suffer from prevention deficit disorder in this country. Think about it. The top killers are 100% preventable. But 95% of our healthcare dollars are pay to live like treatment. I'm not saying we should be doing that. 95% of our healthcare dollars spent on, end-of-life treatment. What does that mean for populations who are just getting started out? We need to think about our whole economy. There's a whole lot of rethinking that we need to do on so many different levels here. Just some thoughts for action. If you look at the graph on the right, you'll see that as we talk about clinical perspectives, we have to talk more about screening tests, prevention communications, behavior change counseling, primary care offices, health system, community-based organizations, the built environment, work sites, schools, community, states, and nations. And we notice that as we pay more attention to what's on the horizontal axis, health improves. It improves. As we talk about information education, organization policies, and public policies, we have to start thinking about policies that exist, or policies that are doing us absolutely no good that we need to get rid of. Also, too. This is just the health system, this is the primary systems pathway. This is a model looking at primary health care services, mechanisms for community health work, we fight against health work. I think that's going to be part of my work also, because I try to help get more community health workers trained and educated to do a lot of frontline work to make their lives easier also too, and those in the communities. And so, some changing interventions. We need to think about this as an individual social model. Again, if you look at this circle and semicircles, we still spend most of our efforts on individual issues as opposed to interpersonal, organization, community, policy issues. We need to expand that. We need to move upstream of that model, because that's what's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak. And help reduce the severity of secondary and tertiary care issues. I put this in because as we talk about the social determinants of health, as people call it anyone in particular, there's an ongoing relationship between education and health. Education is the most robust predictor of health and well-being. Academics is health, and health is academics. You can't separate them. So we have to start looking at our education system in many ways. In our system here, education primarily begins towards the creation of wealth. It's not about the better things and public better things than energy. But you can see that as we talk about child health status and the life course trajectory, these things don't happen all of a sudden. These things happen to children, ACE, and all these things happen very early on. So as a society, if we don't protect and give women and children the things they need very early on, we're doomed to fail. We're doomed to fail as a civilization. We're not civilized yet because we haven't done anything that's really civilized in many ways. But so we have to do these things to improve child health status, and that will help them improve their academic performance in schools, and that will lead to educational awareness, attain greater educational awareness. The more education you have, the better choices and decisions you can make about your lifestyle and your health and well-being. And that means that you have a better health status. So we have to look at that. So if education is health policy, we have to look at how health and education and health are interrelated. Education can contribute substantially to improving health and economic development. How poor health status is a major determinant of educational and economic achievement. Again, there's a strong relationship between learning and health status. Demographic trends show the growing emergence of people of color as the emerging majority in the United States, which is scaring the hell out of a lot of people. With multicultural health education, pre-service training for teachers and students do not have fair access to having the health educated, nor to protective factors that are necessary for education. Then last but not least, equality in workforce development leads to social inclusion and economic well-being. But I'm at the point now where I'm not even talking about inclusion or exclusion, but social cohesion. We got to figure out how to live together as one human family. We got to get past all this other heavy stuff. This is just data that I put again to remind me of what's happening with the health of issues related to racial inequality in American Southwest. The data speaks for itself. When you look at the top histogram there, the table that shows you how African Americans and Native Americans are disparately impacted in this state by issues, by education and health and protection. And we know what happened in because of cultural historical trauma and reasons for that as well. Again, we have to ask, what is happening to you? What's wrong with you? What is happening to you? You see the regional analysis of that also too. So embodiment in epidemiology is a construct process. It's more than just phenotypes and genotypes. It's a multi-level phenomenon. And we have to look at things, at the micro, the necessarily macro level, not just one or the other. Realizing that the effects of structural violence and racism and health status, which is psychosocial interpretation of all of that. And then again, emerging issues of structural racism. And I'm going to should say more about this because I'm really concerned about infant mortality rates of African Americans in the state, Native Americans. Considering when you look at the high mortality rates for both the populations in the state, but for African Americans in particular, we're only 2 to 3% of the population, and we know the fertility age is of 15 to 44. But yet we're seeing these higher infant mortality, something from the Untitled conference, and I put together all this data. Explain this, and everyone's all crazy what you're talking about. And then a few years later, after that film, Unnatural Causes came out, I said, see, I told you I was right. I mean, I have to be right, but I'm never wrong. We have to start looking at life health inventories. We look at life expectancy. How do we close the gaps in the social environment? How do we close the gaps with child and health and well-being, self-related health? My kids will probably say, Dad, you didn't say this, but one of the strategies that I'm really, I've taken a lot of law classes as an undergraduate, and I did some postgraduate work at Georgetown Law School. And when I look at the civil rights movement and how it took on segregation in schools, and I'm starting to think like Charles Hamilton Houston did and others did, that we need to invoke public health laws to change a lot of this. While much hasn't changed since then, but it's still a valuable strategy, I think, in many ways, as we talk about how we have improved the currency of effective public health services and sciences and research and academia, how we look at organizational structure, finance, technology, and data methods. And, it's funny, as everybody talked about PPACA over the last few years, and I'm almost finished, folks, this issue of public health law research, PPACA, also known as Obamacare, and I never call it that, I always call it PPACA, just to throw people off, because that's the name of the bill, There are provisions to increase public health workforce and strengthen quality management, loan repayment programs, workforce grants for state and local programs, public health fellowships, preventive medicine training grants, and reauthorization of public health workforce programs. And I thought, nobody's paying attention to Title 5 and 6 of that law, of that bill. Everything's about, you need health insurance, you need health insurance, you need health insurance. I'm like, but you're missing all the more important parts here that are going to restructure where we go in our healthcare system for the next 25 years or so, But it shows you also, too, what our thinking is in that sense. How many of you have ever heard of the Hill-Burton Act? Okay. The Hill-Burton Act basically was passed in 1948. And this country in 1948 had the opportunity to put primary clinics in almost every neighborhood. But the AMA, the American, the insurance industries, and the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Association got together, lobbied Congress, and said, no, we need more hospitals because we need reimbursement insurance. We need the monies from that. It sold people out in many ways, So this does come back to laws and other types of things, and community development and growth and organizing. And how do we use transdisciplinary cross-sectoral approaches for a culture of health? So for better health faster for all, we have to think about access to evidence and expertise in designing legal solutions, helping engaging communities and building political will, support for enforcing and defending legal solutions, and policy surveillance and evaluation. And I think looking at public health laws, because they're all public health laws when you think about it, transportation, labor, housing, agriculture, farming, food, all these things are public health issues. They're medical issues. They're about our survival. So we need to start addressing them in some ways. So voting is very important. This is just, some of this is from my design, so I wouldn't have to go back later and look at this and figure out what the hell am I doing in my new job, just to give me a map of my plans and ideas. But as we talk about education, citizenship, and social justice, academic medical centers and universities, we have to think about, how do we sustain a democratic society, communities and societies, and how do we reduce these barriers in terms of, aristocratic order, commodification, disciplinary ethnocentrism, tribal. So we need to think different about diversity and multiculturalism, democracy building, healing, and all kinds of things. So we need multiple strategies. And last but not least, human development issues. Thinking about functioning, capabilities, and agency, and caring for those left out for the most part. Rediscovering this notion for restorative justice and healing. Reaching out across those who left out of universal policies, pursue measures for groups of special needs, empowering those left out, and making human development resilient. This is how we're going to survive. So, folks, I do this for the generation that's coming behind me, for the young students and everyone else. I'm going to drop the mic. So I have some questions for you folks, though. Are you ready? Okay, easy stuff. We're going to look at the cognitive side of things. Okay? process cognition. What did you hear today that's new to you that you didn't know before? Brazil. Okay. Another new fact. Another piece of knowledge, information that you didn't know before. There's a lot more than we can acknowledge. Okay. Good. Another fact.
Post-traumatic slave syndrome dysfunction.
Yeah. I'm beginning to think that not only do people of African descent, well, all African descent, everybody is African descent. We want human family. Stop the nonsense. But I'm beginning to think also, too, that people that self-identify as white, maybe they suffer from post-traumatic slave dysfunction order also, too. And that's another research project. Like, oh, I got to find some funding for that. That's gonna be interesting. What else is new to you that you didn't know before? Is one other new thing? Running away from slavery is a mental illness. Okay. I think so. It's vulture capitalism. So a little bit of capitalism necessary, but this stuff is overkill. This is it's nuts. Five injustices. Okay. One other new fact, piece of information that you didn't know before.
Everything below the iceberg.
Wow. Yeah, that's critical also too. Scary stuff. I used to wonder, as we talk about philosophy and epistemology, the study of knowledge, who controls it, how it's produced, how is it used? I'm beginning to think now that I need to understand epistemology of ignorance. And how is it produced and maintained? And how do we do that? Because, and how ignorance is different from stupidity. Okay, so new knowledge, because I know it's Friday and you folks are ready to leave. So let's go to the affective states right now, emotionally. When you heard most of the stuff today, what were your feelings? Surprise, anger, joy, suspicion, pissed off, frustrated. Excuse me? Sad. Okay, what else? Other emotions?
Honestly, it really, some of that stuff really triggers a visceral response from like my historic trauma of myself, and like my knowledge of like my family's historic trauma.
Okay, a very visceral response like, I'm hurt because I know other people are hurting.
Like, no, like feeling it.
You're feeling it, yeah.
Really feeling it.
Okay, good. Other feelings? So it sparked your curiosity?
Yes.
Okay, good. Any other emotional things? Because I don't want anybody leaving here, suffering from trauma. We got enough trauma in our lives. You don't need to be adding to it. Especially since I'm trying to prevent it. Yes, sir.
Maybe disappointment?
Disappointment.
Yeah.
Okay.
I got so much information, and it's all throughout my education, college classes. I think there's just not enough of what you have here in a lot of the learning that we're exposed to. And so I'm disappointed that there's not more of what we have here in our educational process.
Which makes us think that how we have to reform the education system too, as we think about things, how we have to decolonize our minds. One person who was had been living in the Netherlands for a while, visited me. He said, like, wow, Dr. J, being in the classroom with you is like being in the ring with Mike Tyson. You can hit with everything. I said, well, everybody has different learning styles. I hope something will stick. Yes.
So, a good part of what you're talking about on the social worker resonated with me because of what I learned as a social worker.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But in this hospital,
Institutionalized culture, and we must maintain and keep things doing things. What did Einstein say insanity was? Doing things the same way every time and expecting different results? That's why I say this is about a new form of critical thinking, how we engage in our work at every level, and how we rethink this and ask the questions. It's not so much the answers we look for, but it's the questions that we have to ask people. We have to cause that friction in the mind, as Martin Luther King said.
we focus on, okay, somebody has to get out of the hospital, but where are they going to go? And what led them to getting into the hospital? Nobody thinks about that.
I know.
And we don't talk about it. We don't set up staffing to be able to do anything. But it's, especially inpatient social work, it's just get them out of the hospital, just get them out
Yeah,
of the hospital.
we'll sign it to someone else, because I'll get you in a second. I know you know that when you look at the data, for every physician that we train, we have to train 10 allied health professionals to support that person also too. So this is another whole new paradigm as we rethink all of this. We'll come, hang on a second, we'll come back to that conversation in just a moment.
I wanted to say something else.
Please.
But probably the salary of the person at the
Ah.
top is gonna
Ah.
be the same as it would equal the salary of the 10 people that are supplying those services.
Lots of injustice and disparities,
Yeah.
which is why we leave home and head home every day even more frustrated and freaked out. To be continued.
So I want to come back to what you were saying. I'm sorry, but you said you're a social worker. One of the initiatives that we're working on over through Office for Community Health, Dr. Martin and Dr. Evan Kaufman, is really trying to implement a systems-wide form within the EMRs that will allow them to give patients, providers, frontline folks, health workers, social workers, to be able to identify people's social determinants of health, what their needs are. If something led you to the ED because you have flu or pneumonia, well, it's not just about treating the symptomatic problems, it's about what brought you there. You are homeless and you've been sleeping out in the cold. You haven't had a PCP monitoring your ongoing, pulmonary issues.
Mhm.
Okay, well, why are you homeless? Why don't you have a job?
Exactly.
Because you have, mental health, growth disorders. So we're really trying to look at, from a systems-wide perspective, how we can implement the tools to be readily available to the people that are servicing the patients day in and day out.
Cradle to the grave. It's a whole new paradigm shift. Okay, so we've looked at our cognition, we've looked at our affective states. Now, as we think about the three functions of the mind, thinking, feeling, and wanting, thinking helps us make sense of our perceptions about our feelings. And once we have our thinking and our feelings in alignment, then it helps us make better choices about our motivations and our desires to achieve a certain thing. Most people just jump from feelings to desire. So we got our thinking and our feelings in alignment. What does all this mean today? What we've been talking about, and you're getting to it in that sense about this need for revolution of consciousness, about a new model, about how we improve the health of the population. When I was in high school, we always talked about during the '60s. Can you change the system once you get inside the system? It can't be fixed. And I like to think that maybe every now and then we can create some disruptive innovations. But as I get older and wiser, I think the thing is just too corrupt. So we need to create new institutions and organizations to compete against it. And that's what we're trying to do out of the Office of Community Health and our expansion on these things. So you folks rest and play with that for a moment or so. And my last question is, what are your next steps? Sit down and do some more thinking about your metacognition. I'll stop it right there with that little laugh for now, but I know that folks are tired. You've had a long day. Thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of certain things with me. I'm looking forward to your support and working with you all as we continue to move and grow, because we're all in this together, And so thank you. Have a great day and be at peace, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin.
Sucks.
I know, I just love this guy. First time I heard him speak, he said, I think it was 2 years ago at Juneteenth, and he said, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And I was like, ooh. So I knew we had to bring him here. So,
I'll let you
we are not going to let this end here. Our committee wants to keep things going and work with Fabian, work with Dr. Martin and our HSC partners to strengthen some of this and talk about what the next steps are and what can we do at our organization to make things better for not only our patients but each other, because that's a big goal even for our hospital, is how do we take care of each other so we can better take care of our patients. And that's what it's all about, especially with our new delivering more theme and those things. We really do need to do a better job of delivering to the African American community, specifically those social determinants of health. So as you go back to your jobs and your areas, think about how you can incorporate that into your practice and asking, what do you need to be able to be healthier? We have a video that we talk about with one of our patients who is one of our home health patients, 94-year-old woman, doesn't have family, and she told our nurses that we're fighting with her about her blood sugar and checking she's a diabetic. And she just literally looked at them and said, I cannot even think about my diabetes because I have a hole in my roof and my toilet doesn't flush. So I can't think about doing that. And so what we did is we worked with Senior Affairs to get her roof fixed, because Senior Affairs will do that for seniors. And we got her toilet fixed. And now she also had a problem getting hot meals every day, so we got her set up with Meals on Wheels, so she gets some really good nutritional food that will work for her. And now her blood sugar, her diabetes is under control. She's happy. She's healthier. She recorded a video for us about what the impact was for her, and I just can't say enough about that's the work that we have to do here. Is not just look at, oh, you're here for whatever the disease is, but what is it that we can help you not just be healthy but also thrive. And that's a big part of our goal here at the hospital. So thank you so much. Mercedes.
Can I give a shameless plug for a minute?
Please.
Through Office for Community Health and the Vice Chancellor for Community Health, Dr. Arthur Kaufman's department, we have lots of different programs that we work with that focus on a lot of the things that Dr. Martin talked about today and addressing some of those social determinants of health and the racial inequities that people and our clients and patients face when trying to navigate healthcare systems. If people in your department, providers, nurses, PAs, MAs, any of your folks, even your frontline intake people, are interested in hearing about some of the programs, resources, and ongoing professional development opportunities that we offer, you can grab one of my cards and let me know. Happy to connect you with somebody in our department that's happy to reach out.
Thank you for that. And please do come get her card, because we need a lot when it comes to that. I wanted to share one last thing that you can find in our special deliveries that are going out is our link to our showcase. All throughout the month, we highlighted several different African American staff. I think we ended up with like 13 different videos. These are people who work here every day that are doing great things, and I want to play just a couple of them since we have 5 minutes that we didn't get to play this last week. And so we'll play Christina Nicholson from the back there, and then we'll also play Aisha's as well. So we'll start with Christina.
I feel very fortunate in my life where I have an opportunity to give back, so I want to be able to extend those blessings. The way I deliver more to our patients in our community is just being very active in our community, from doing volunteer events that the hospital helps put on, doing Healthcare Workers Week here, and when we bring our patients in for, let's say, the Teddy Bear Hospital and volunteer for things like that, to personal projects of mine in the community, like building hair kits for the homeless and helping with Special Olympics. That's how I help on a broader spectrum for our patients. It's so important to highlight what all of our communities are doing, and by recognizing each individual group, I think it highlights what strengths each group brings to the table and really shows that we have so much more in common than we do that divides us. And I think it's really important for us to continue to highlight those, and that's one of the things that I love about UNMH, that we do that.
Give Christina a round of applause. All right, and one of my most favorite people, Aisha Jones.
I have not seen this yet.
My name is Aisha Jones. I'm the Director of Best Practice Providers, and I'm also a family nurse practitioner who does hospital medicine and mental health. I come to work every day so that I can help service the community, which the community is also my family. I'm born and raised here, and so I treat everybody like family. And the family that you love, especially the ones that are lost or just, they're here because they're at their lowest point in the day or the year or whatever, and just to say, here I am to help you. That's what makes me do every day.
Yay. And I think I'm going to throw one more in because Alan's in the back there helping us with videography. You notice I'm not going to play my own video.
HSC Studio serves as a service center. We provide photography and videography service throughout the different departments within the health system. The projects I've worked on varies from department to department. So I've done program videos all the way to training videos. I get up every morning and come to work because this is what I love to do. It's fulfilling to me. UNMH Health System celebrating Black History Month means a lot to me. When I first started here, there really featuring the staff and faculty, boards to really kind of get that ball rolling for celebrating Black History Month. It has definitely grown, and I just want to see that continue on.
So please do check those out. There's a link on the special delivery. You can watch everybody's videos. And we have just a rich, and not just in the African American community, but really a rich community in UNM. And I really want to give a shout out to Brandy Stone at African American Student Services for the amazing Black History t-shirts. Yes. That all of our team is wearing, and we're excited to be able to bridge main campus with North Campus and do some more initiatives. And people have been asking, where do you get the shirts? Where do you get the shirts? So next year we'll beef it up and we'll see if we can get them in the gift shops and the bookstore on North Campus, because all the proceeds to this actually do go to a scholarship at African American Student Services that goes directly to students. So I'm proud to say that our team was able to contribute almost $300 to that scholarship by purchasing the shirts. So
And they are available for purchase at the Fro on campus.
they are, and she's running really low because I already emailed her like, I need about 10 of them because everybody's asking for them, so they may not have them after I go. So. But thank you all so much for joining us today. Please help yourself to some more food. We have to-go cups. So please, we don't want to waste it. We have more in the containers there. We're going to pull them out, and then you can take some home or to your teams that couldn't make it today. Thank you very much.